Imagine standing naked in negative 40-degree temperatures with 70-mile-per-hour winds cutting through your skin. You have 3 minutes before hypothermia sets in. Now imagine surviving like this for decades. While we panic when our heating drops below 68 degrees, our Ice Age ancestors thrived in conditions that would kill modern humans in minutes. Today, I'm revealing 12 mind-blowing facts about Ice Age fashion that completely shatter what you thought you knew about prehistoric survival. Using archaeological evidence from 30,000-year-old burial sites, microscopic fiber analysis, and DNA testing of preserved materials, scientists have uncovered the truth about what our ancestors really wore. Forget those caveman stereotypes of rough animal skins. Ice Age fashion was more sophisticated than most clothing made before the Industrial Revolution. The evidence will shock you, and by the end of this video, you'll never look at your winter coat the same way again. Fact number 12. Ice Age humans invented the world's first technical layering system, 20,000 years before modern outdoor brands discovered it. The base layer used twisted plant fibers that created a moisture-wicking effect by pulling sweat away from the skin. Sound familiar? That's exactly how modern merino wool functions. The middle insulation layer trapped warm air using rabbit fur sewn in patchwork patterns, while the outer shell layer used windproof leather with the hair side out. This wasn't fashion, it was the difference between freezing to death in hours or surviving decades. When archaeologists first discovered these layering techniques, they couldn't believe the sophistication. Tests on reconstructed garments show they retain heat better than many modern synthetic materials. The secret was in how they trapped air in microscopic pockets between the layers. By combining different materials and fur directions, they created insulation that outperformed modern gear by up to 30% in some conditions. The base layer deserves special attention. Made from nettle fibers or wild flax, these garments were surprisingly soft against the skin. The fibers were processed by soaking in water, beating with stones, and then spinning into thread using handheld spindles. This thread was then woven or knitted into fabric using techniques we're still discovering. Clay impressions from sites like Dolny Vistanish show complex weaving patterns that required advanced mathematical understanding. The resulting fabric wasn't rough or scratchy, but smooth and comfortable, with natural antimicrobial properties that reduced odor. The middle insulation layer showcased true innovation. Rather than using large pieces of fur that would mat down and lose insulation value, they created quilted sections filled with down, cattail fluff, or milkweed fibers. These sections were carefully sized to prevent cold spots while allowing flexibility. Some garments had over 50 separate insulation chambers, each filled and sealed individually. If one section got damaged or wet, it could be opened, emptied, refilled, and resealed without compromising the entire garment. Fact number 11. The invention that changed everything was bone needles so fine they rival modern steel needles. These needles allowed Ice Age tailors to create waterproof seams using sinew thread that swelled when wet, sealing any gaps. The process required hand-eye coordination that modern sewers struggle to match. With these tools, they could make fitted sleeves, hoods with drawstrings, and even gussets for better movement. Creating just one needle could take days of careful grinding and polishing. The eye had to be drilled using a tiny stone bit, and one wrong move would snap the delicate bone. Yet these people made thousands of them. Some needles found in Siberia are so fine you can barely see the eye without magnification. This level of precision appeared 45,000 years ago, long before agriculture or permanent settlements. The needle-making process was incredibly complex. First, suitable bones had to be selected, usually from birds or small mammals for the finest needles. The bone was soaked to soften it slightly, then carefully scraped and ground using progressively finer stone tools. The tip was shaped using a grinding stone with grooves worn specifically for needle-making. The eye was the most challenging part. Using a flint micro-drill no thicker than a hair, the craftsperson would slowly bore through the bone, frequently stopping to clear debris and prevent overheating that could crack the needle. Different needles served different purposes. Thick, sturdy needles made from deer antler could punch through multiple layers of heavy leather. Medium needles from bird bones worked for general sewing. The finest needles, some less than 0.04 inches thick, were reserved for decorative work and creating nearly invisible seams. Archaeological sites have yielded needle cases made from hollow bird bones, complete with stoppers, showing how precious these tools were. Some cases contain needles of graduated sizes, much like modern sewing kits. Fact number 10, they discovered that mammoth fur, when layered with cattail fluff, created insulation superior to modern synthetic materials. Tests show this combination retained heat at temperatures down to -60 degrees. The hollow structure of mammoth hair trapped air in ways synthetic fibers still can't replicate. By adding layers of plant down between fur panels, they created what we now call a high-loft insulation system. The science behind this is fascinating. Each mammoth hair was actually hollow like a tiny tube. When combined with the fluffy seed heads of cattails or other plants, it created millions of air pockets. Modern outdoor companies have spent millions trying to recreate this natural insulation system, but nothing matches the original. Some Arctic peoples continued using similar techniques well into the 20th century because nothing worked better. But mammoth fur was just one option in their insulation arsenal. Muskox wool, called caveman today, provided incredibly warm and lightweight insulation. This underwool is 8 times warmer than sheep's wool and softer than cashmere. Ice Age humans collected it during spring molting seasons, when the animals naturally shed their winter coats. The fibers were so fine they could be spun into thread without any processing, creating garments that were warm, water-resistant, and incredibly light. For those without access to mammoth or muskox, other solutions existed. Layers of bird skins with feathers intact created excellent insulation. The feathers were positioned to overlap like shingles, trapping air while shedding moisture. Waterfowl skins were particularly prized because their feathers had natural oils that repelled water. Some cultures created composite insulation using layers of different fur types, each chosen for specific properties like water resistance, wind blocking, or maximum loft. Fact number 9, getting wet in the Ice Age meant death, so they developed waterproofing that would impress modern engineers. Using rendered animal fats combined with pine resin and beeswax, they created a flexible coating that repelled water while still allowing the leather to breathe. Applied in thin layers using heated stones, this treatment could keep garments dry even in freezing rain. The waterproofing process took weeks to complete properly. First, they'd work the fat and resin mixture into the leather using smooth stones. Then they'd smoke the garment over specific woods that added both waterproofing and antibacterial properties. The final product was so effective that water would bead up and roll off, just like modern technical fabrics. Some indigenous groups in Siberia still use variations of these techniques because they work better than store-bought alternatives. The chemistry behind their waterproofing was remarkably advanced. Different combinations of fats, resins, and waxes created different properties. Bear fat mixed with spruce resin stayed flexible in extreme cold. Seal oil combined with birch bark tar created a waterproofing that could withstand salt water. They even understood that certain tree resins had antimicrobial properties that prevented the leather from rotting in damp conditions. The smoking process added another layer of protection. Different woods imparted different qualities. Willow smoke contained natural insect repellents. Pine smoke added extra waterproofing compounds. Birch smoke helped preserve the leather and gave it a pleasant smell. The temperature and duration of smoking were carefully controlled, with master craftspeople knowing exactly how long to smoke different types of leather for optimal results. Too little and the garment wouldn't be properly protected. Too much and the leather would become brittle. Fact number 8, those decorative elements weren't just for beauty. Each served a survival function. Shells sewn onto shoulders indicated your group's trading connections, potentially saving your life when meeting strangers. Bone toggles weren't just fasteners. They were emergency tools that could become fishing hooks or sewing awls. Colored ochre patterns showed which migration routes your clan followed, helping you find allies in unfamiliar territory. What looked like simple decoration was actually a complex communication system. Red ochre stripes might indicate a successful hunter, while specific bead patterns showed your clan's relationship to others. Fringes weren't just decorative either. They helped shed rain away from seams and created movement that scared away insects. Even the placement of fur trim had meaning, with certain arrangements showing age, status, or specialized skills. The complexity of this visual language was staggering. Archaeologists have identified over 200 different bead patterns from various Ice Age sites, each with potential meaning. Some patterns appear across thousands of miles, suggesting widespread understanding of these symbols. A spiral pattern might indicate knowledge of astronomy, while zigzag patterns could show the number of successful hunts. Women often wore different patterns than men, and children had their own symbolic decorations that changed as they grew. The materials chosen for decoration carried meaning too. Shells from specific beaches indicated participation in long-distance trade networks. Amber beads showed connections to Baltic regions. Ivory from mammoths versus walruses indicated different hunting territories. Some decorations could only be worn after completing certain achievements, like killing a cave bear or successfully leading a long-distance migration. Breaking these decoration codes by wearing symbols you hadn't earned was a serious offense that could result in banishment from the group. Fact number 7. Ice Age boots were so advanced that modern recreations require 40+ hours to make a single pair. Multiple layers included an inner sock of rabbit fur, a middle layer of woven grass for insulation, and an outer shell of tough leather with the first crampons made from antler spikes. The construction allowed travel across ice at speeds that would challenge modern hikers. The engineering of these boots was incredible. They used different leather thicknesses for flexibility and durability, with the sole being made from the tough neck hide of large animals. The upper parts used softer belly leather that could flex without cracking. Sinew reinforcements at stress points prevented tears, while a complex lacing system allowed quick adjustments for different terrains. Some designs even included removable liners that could be dried separately, preventing the deadly moisture buildup that causes frostbite. The sole construction alone was a masterpiece of engineering. Multiple layers of leather were sewn together with the grain running in different directions for maximum strength. Between these layers, they added thin sheets of bark or horn for extra protection against sharp ice. The famous Ötzi the Iceman, though from a later period, wore boots with this same multi-layer construction, proving how effective the design was. The soles were often scored with deep grooves for better traction, and some had bone or antler cleats that could be replaced when worn. The insulation system in these boots prevented one of the biggest dangers in cold climates: moisture accumulation. They used a variety of dried grasses, including species that naturally resisted moisture absorption. These grasses were carefully selected, dried, and then twisted into loose bundles that could be easily replaced. Some boots had special openings that allowed the wearer to add or remove insulation without taking the boot off. This was crucial during long journeys where stopping to adjust footwear could be dangerous. Fact number 6. They created the world's first adjustable clothing system using toggles made from ivory and antler. These allowed wearers to quickly add or remove layers without exposing their core to cold air. The system prevented both hypothermia and dangerous overheating during physical activity. Think of it as prehistoric climate control. The toggle system was genius in its simplicity. By placing openings at strategic points like underarms, waist, and neck, they could regulate temperature precisely. Long-distance hunters could start a journey bundled up, then open vents as they warmed up from movement, all without stopping or removing layers. The toggles themselves were carved with grooves that gripped the leather cords securely but released quickly when needed. This prevented the dangerous scenario of being unable to cool down during intense activity, which can lead to sweating and eventual hypothermia. The physics behind their ventilation system would impress modern designers. They understood that warm air rises, so they placed vents at the top of garments to release excess heat. Cool air intake vents were positioned lower, creating a natural convection current inside the clothing. Some garments had overlapping panels that could be adjusted to control airflow precisely. This wasn't random placement, it was deliberate engineering based on careful observation of how air and heat move through clothing. The toggles themselves were works of art. Each was carved with specific patterns that made them easy to grip even with mittened hands. Some had holes drilled at angles that created a locking mechanism when the cord was pulled tight. Others used a spiral groove system that held progressively tighter as weight was applied. These weren't just functional items. They were often decorated with tiny carvings of animals or geometric patterns, turning a simple fastener into a piece of wearable art. Fact number 5. Children's clothing reveals the most ingenious innovations of all. Integrated carrying systems allowed babies to be worn inside the parent's parka, sharing body heat while leaving hands free for work. Adjustable elements meant garments could grow with the child over several years. Built-in visibility markers using bright shells or painted designs helped keep track of young ones in blizzard conditions. The child-carrying systems were particularly clever. The baby would be placed in a fur-lined pouch attached to the inside of the parent's parka, positioned so they could nurse without exposing either to cold. Air vents ensured the child could breathe while staying warm. For toddlers, clothing included attached mittens that couldn't be lost and hoods that secured tightly but had emergency release systems. Some garments even had built-in harnesses that could tether a child during dangerous weather while still allowing movement. The growth accommodation systems were remarkably sophisticated. Sleeves and pant legs had hidden extra material folded and secured inside special pockets. As the child grew, these sections could be released, adding several inches of length. Strategic placement of decorative elements disguised the fold lines. Some garments had modular sections that could be completely replaced as the child grew, with standardized attachment points that made swapping pieces easy. This meant a single garment frame could last a child from toddler to teen years. Safety features in children's clothing went beyond visibility. Some garments had built-in flotation using sealed bladders made from animal intestines, crucial when crossing rivers or traveling near water. Reinforced areas protected knees and elbows during the crawling stage. Special pockets held emergency supplies like dried food or fire-starting materials. Some clothing even incorporated noisemakers from dried seed pods or small bones that would rattle if a child wandered too far. An Ice Age version of a child locator. Fact number 4, every person carried a sophisticated repair kit that would impress modern craftsmen. Bone needles in graduated sizes, sinew thread pre-twisted and waxed, spare toggles, leather patches in different thicknesses, and even tiny awls for emergency repairs. Using invisible mending methods passed down through generations, they could repair tears so well that the fix was stronger than the original material. Garments lasted decades with proper maintenance, not seasons. The repair techniques they used were incredibly advanced. They knew how to match the grain direction of leather patches, how to create nearly invisible seams using specific stitching patterns, and how to reinforce areas before they wore out. Some repairs involved removing entire sections and rebuilding them. They even had ways to rejuvenate old leather using brain tanning techniques that restored flexibility. This wasn't just mending, it was an art form that ensured precious garments could be passed down through generations. The contents of a typical repair kit tell us about their sophistication. Beyond basic needles and thread, they carried specialized tools like leather stretchers made from split antler, burnishing stones for sealing seams, and tiny knives for precise cutting. Thread came in different weights and materials, sinew for strength, plant fibers for flexibility, and even human hair for the finest decorative work. They carried different adhesives too: pine pitch for waterproof repairs, hide glue for reinforcing seams, and blood-based glues that created incredibly strong bonds. Preventive maintenance was just as important as repairs. They regularly treated leather with oils to prevent cracking, replaced worn sections before they failed completely, and reinforced high-stress areas before problems developed. Garments were inspected after each use, with small issues addressed immediately before they became major problems. This attention to maintenance meant that a well-cared-for parka could last 20 years or more, being passed down through families and accumulating repairs that told the story of its use. Fact number 3. From Siberian tundra to European forests, each region developed unique solutions to their climate challenges. Northern groups used layered fur systems with the hair directions alternating for maximum insulation. Southern populations created breathable leather garments with removable linings for seasonal changes. Trade routes spread innovations like waterproofing techniques and new materials across thousands of miles. What worked in one region was quickly adapted for others. The regional variations tell us how innovative and connected these people were. Coastal groups incorporated seal gut for waterproof outer layers, while inland peoples perfected the use of deer and elk hides. Some cultures developed specialized snow goggles from ivory with tiny slits to prevent snow blindness. Others created elaborate ventilation systems in their clothing for humid forests. These weren't isolated groups struggling to survive. They were part of vast networks sharing knowledge and materials across continents. In the far north, Siberian groups developed the anorak, a pullover parka design that minimized heat loss from openings. These garments featured extended hoods that created a tunnel of warm air in front of the face, protecting lungs from freezing air. The bottom hem could be cinched tight to trap warm air or loosened for ventilation. Some versions had specialized pockets positioned to keep hands warm while still allowing quick access to tools or weapons. Mediterranean and Near Eastern groups faced different challenges, creating clothing that could handle extreme temperature swings between day and night. They developed layering systems using plant fibers and thin leather that could be quickly adjusted. Their waterproofing focused more on sudden rain showers than snow, using different oil and wax combinations that stayed flexible in heat. Decorative elements often incorporated sun protection, with wide-brimmed hoods and eye shades woven from grass. Fact number 2, clothing revealed complex social hierarchies we're only beginning to understand. Elite burials show garments covered in tens of thousands of ivory beads, each taking an hour or more to create. That's several years of work for a single outfit. Rare furs from distant regions indicated wealth and trading power. Specific dye colors were reserved for certain roles or achievements. Complexity levels in beadwork revealed the skill and status of both maker and wearer. The social significance of clothing went far beyond simple status display. Certain patterns could only be worn by those who had completed specific rites of passage. Some decorations indicated specialized knowledge, like astronomical observations or healing practices. Marriage ceremonies involved the exchange of specific garments that bound families together. Clothing was a visual language that communicated everything from your birthplace to your spiritual beliefs. Breaking these clothing codes could result in exile or worse. The economic implications of elaborate clothing were staggering. A fully beaded outfit from Sunghir contained over 13,000 beads. If each bead took an hour to make, that's over 6 years of full-time work for one person. This suggests either specialized craftspeople dedicated to bead making or communal efforts where many people contributed. The investment of time and resources in such garments indicates complex social structures with surplus labor and sophisticated exchange systems. Clothing also played crucial roles in diplomacy and alliance building. Specific garments were created as gifts to seal important agreements. The transfer of a decorated parka from one leader to another could signify peace between groups or permission to hunt in certain territories. Some garments incorporated elements from multiple regions, showing the wearer's connections across vast distances. These diplomatic garments were often the most elaborate, combining techniques and materials from different cultures to create something unique that represented the alliance itself. Fact number 1. The most shocking revelation is that Ice Age humans spent more time and effort on their clothing than many modern people do. A single decorated parka could represent 800 hours of work when you factor in hide preparation, sewing, and beadwork. Children learned clothing construction from age 5, starting with simple projects and advancing to complex garments by their teens. Master tailors were valued as highly as the best hunters because everyone's survival depended on their skills. Think about that for a moment. These people invested months creating a single garment. They understood that quality clothing meant the difference between life and death. Every stitch was placed with purpose. Every decoration had meaning. Compare that to our disposable fashion culture, where clothes last a season. They created garments meant to last decades, even generations. The knowledge required was staggering, from understanding which animal provided the best leather for specific uses to knowing exactly how to construct garments that move with the body during hunting or gathering. The education system for clothing construction was as complex as any modern apprenticeship. Young children started by learning to process sinew, twisting and waxing threads under the guidance of elders. By age 8 or 9, they were creating simple items like mittens or boot liners. Teenagers worked on increasingly complex projects, learning not just construction techniques, but the cultural significance of different designs. The final test of mastery often involved creating a complete outfit for another person, demonstrating not just technical skill, but the ability to fit garments properly and incorporate appropriate cultural elements. The respect given to master clothing makers equaled that of any other specialist in Ice Age society. They were consulted on important decisions because their knowledge extended beyond simple construction. They understood weather patterns, animal behavior, plant properties, and complex mathematical concepts required for creating fitted garments. Some burial sites show clothing makers buried with the same honors as successful hunters or spiritual leaders, their tools placed carefully beside them for the afterlife. Their work was recognized as essential to group survival and cultural continuity. These weren't primitive people wearing crude skins. They were master craftspeople whose innovations took humanity 20,000 years to rediscover. Every time you zip up a waterproof jacket or layer for cold weather, you're using principles Ice Age humans perfected through deadly trial and error. Next time you complain about the cold, remember ancestors who not only survived, but thrived in conditions that would kill us in minutes. What shocked you most about Ice Age fashion? Drop a comment below. I read every single one. If this blew your mind, wait until you see what Stone Age weapons were really capable of. Subscribe and hit the notification bell to join our journey through humanity's most incredible survival stories.